Very good evening to all of you. Today we are going to discuss another most important consolidation question, which is in CA corporate level. So the question is on 1st October 2019, Ranmal Private Limited RPA acquired 75 of the equity shares of the TPL. In this case, RPL become the parent, TPL become the subsidiary. Both companies have common financial year that ends 31st March, right? This is a mid-year acquisition, 19 October, 1st October, 1st of 19. The reporting date is 31st March 2020. It means, as per the question, 31st March, this is a 6 year. Be careful on that. Sometimes it can be either depreciation, the post-acquisition profit also need to be recognized for a 6 years time, sorry, 6 month time period, not for the entire year, right? හරිනේ 19 10 11 12 1 2 3 මාස 6යි, right? So the blah blah black sheets, some adjustments are there. Some adjustments are there. The RPA paid cash amount in 250 million immediately through acquired TPL. The parent paid 250. This is a cash consideration. Additionally, RPA also agreed to pay 75 million on 1st October 2021. It is a deferred consideration. The fair value of the remaining 25%, it means NCI portion is 30 million directly given. The NCI value, the non-controlling interest measured at fair value, that is why it's given. If so, sometimes it can be either a proportionate share basis of the net identifiable net asset at the acquisition date, right? The retained earnings of the TPL, it means subsidiary, 1st October 2019 at the acquisition date is 132 million. The stated capital not changed. So these things important for the what? For the fair value, sorry, the goodwill computation, the cash consideration, 250, we know that. The cash consideration, the purchase consideration, distinguish between the cash consideration. Cash consideration, 250,000. The deferred consideration, deferred consideration, is it how much? Deferred consideration. The deferred consideration, it's 75 million. හරියටම අවුරුද්දක් නේ. මොකද අපි acquire කරන්නේ කවද 19 1යි 10 1 21යි 21 2 years we have. 19 නේ 20 21 2 years 75යි. Discounting factor, it mentioned that 12% take as a discounting factor. 75. How to take the discount? 75 million divided by 1 plus 12% into 2 years, right? To 2 years. It is 59,890 approximately. Let me check the deferred consideration. Yes. 59,790 approximately. We can take it. Right. There is no any contingent consideration. Sometimes it can be either share consideration also. Right. So when we have a deferred consideration, we want to unwind the interest. Be careful on that. It means for 6 months, because we are acquiring 1st October 2019. Our reporting period is 31st March 2020. In here mentioned, right? 31st March 2020. You want to unwind the interest. Unwinding the interest. How much? It is the 12%. Unwinding in the interest. 59,790 into 10, sorry, 12% into 2 half. This is the interest portion. Right. I think there is the answer, right? The deferred consideration. The finance cost on deferred consideration, 59,790 into 12% into 1/2 because the 6 month only we can recognize. Be careful on these kind of situations. So now we know the purchase consideration, cash, and the deferred consideration. The deferred consideration double entry is how much? What is the double entry? Deferred consideration credit, debit to where? Debit to cost of control account when we recognize the goodwill, right? At the acquisition date. The fair value of NCI. So now the consideration is over. The fair value of the NCI is 30 million. 30 million. So we have NCI 30,000. Let's assume because we are dealing with thousands. 30,000. Okay. The fair value of net asset. Fair value of net asset at the acquisition date. At the acquisition date, we have fair value of net asset. The fair value, the purchase consideration against the fair value of net assets. That is why I'm writing there. The fair value of the net assets, we have the retained earnings balance is 132 million. Kasiya 32 retained earnings. Kasiya 32 ලක්ෂ 32,000. And the stated capital, how much? Stated capital of the subsidiary, not the parent. Be careful on those kind of things. There is no any general reserve in this question. The retained earnings given 150,000. 1,50,000, right? So after deducting these two, can I get the summation of this? Right. The goodwill is this much. The goodwill is this much. The goodwill is this. Sorry. We have a fair value adjustments as well at the acquisition date. I forget it. The fair value adjustments. We can't compute the goodwill. The first adjustment is done, right? The second, the fair value of the net asset of the TPL on 1st October 2019 were equal to the carrying amount, except building 10 million its carrying value. It means if there is a building, you can recognize what is the double entry. The building is debit, the fair value, the cost of control, credit, right? The building, I'm showing only the goodwill computation. The building, we have a 10 million excess, it means 10,000. I'm putting minus because the goodwill is the purchase considered plus NCI minus the fair value of net asset, right? The computation, can you remember? Hurry. Goodwill. So here, the building is a depreciable asset. So you want to deduct 10 million. The fair value gains are subject to the tax. Do we have a deferred tax asset or deferred tax liability? In that case, if the fair value gain, definitely we have a deferred tax liability. Deferred tax liability. Deferred tax liability. No, here. Deferred tax liability do we have? Deferred tax liability is how much? 10,000, 10 million into what is the tax rate? It's given 28% income tax rate, 28%. 10,000 into 28%, it means 2,800. 2,800, we have a deferred tax liability, not a deferred tax asset, right? Deferred tax liability on fair value gain. The double entry is the deferred tax is a liability, deferred tax liability credit. The cost of control account, it should be debit, right? Because based on the deferred tax liability, your equity value is the fair value of net assets is declining, reducing, right? The fair value of the net assets is reducing, the deferred tax liability, right? The second one, the depreciation, the building has a remaining 15 years, depreciation is 10 million divided by 15 into half. 10 million divided by 15 into 0.5. Let me write like that way. The depreciation, it means 233,333 points, right? 333.333. Yes, 333 කියලා approximately we can take, right? The double entry is the depreciation building credit. Who has that depreciation building? The subsidiary return earnings credit. Sorry, debit, because the expense, no? The PPE in here it's mentioned, like first adjustment is done, the goodwill 39070ක් අපි තාම නැහැ recognize කරේ නැහැ goodwill එක. So we deal with the cash consideration, deferred consideration, NCI, it's okay. The stated capital we can know. Return is given, the fair value increase of the building we recognize, the deferred tax liability on the fair value gain recognize. If it is the simple method is, if it is a fair value gain, there is a deferred tax liability. If it is a fair value loss, deferred tax asset is there, right? Fair value gain, we have a deferred tax liability. These are the basics from LKS 12, right? Not for the consolidation. The income tax adjustments, we are not going to discuss in here, right? The 15 years, the depreciation also done. So we discussed the depreciation, these things, right? After that, we can adjust. Firstly, we want to careful on the adjustments. DPL had an internally generated intangible asset as per the LKS 38, but we can't recognize, but consolidation purpose under the IFRS 3, the business combinations, we can recognize. The only we can violate the LKS 38 is the business combinations, right? 16 million and undefinite useful life. It means there is no any amortization, right? 16 million, 28%. 16 million, the fair value gain, the intangible asset 16 million. Intangible asset 16 million. It also we have a deferred tax liability. 15 million, sorry, 16 million into 28%, right? Is it 28 or 24? I can't remember, right? Easy questions, right? 28%. Goodwill, sorry. Here you can see the deferred tax on intangible asset, RCSY approximately. Yes. After that, we can recognize the goodwill. Goodwill, the most critical part is the goodwill computation. How to recognize the goodwill? Here with the value of these things, we can recognize. But after that, we can deduct these things. The goodwill is the goodwill is 39,070. 39,070. It's clear, right? How we derive these things. It's clear for you all. It's okay that the double entry is the goodwill debit. It's an asset, intangible assets, goodwill debit. Here it's mentioned the goodwill 39,070, the goodwill 39,070. But there is also have a it was revealed that 20% of the goodwill is impaired. The goodwill impairment is 39,070 into 20%. It means 7,814 goodwill impairment. 7,814. It should be distributed among based on the parent and the NCI shareholders, the minority shareholders, right? The NCI is 25%. So 7,814 25ක් යනවා. Consolidated return earnings 6,641යි 6,000 මෙතන බලන්න. Working number කීයද? Working number 3. Working number 3 7,814 goodwill එකට credit වෙනවා. It should be debited to the consolidated return earnings. Return earnings 5,000. The remaining should goes to the NCI, right? NCI. How much is it? 80%. 75%, right? Not 85. අද 75. මට මැත්සුත් බෑ. 5860ක් යනවා parent and remaining goes to the NCI because the owners of the subsidiary is the parent and the NCI because this is a not fully owned subsidiary for the TPL. This is for the RPL. This is a partially owned subsidiary for the RPL. So, 75ක RPL ට අයිති parent ඉතුරු 25 NCI holders ලට because මේගොල්ලෝ loss එකක් තිබ්බොත් ඒ දෙක අතර allocate කරන්න ඕනේ. හරිද? එතකොට ඒකත් හරි. On February, this is linked with investment in associate. On 1st February 2020, RPA bought 25% of the equity shares of the Make Private Limited. So the RPL has now we have investment in associate. The equity consolidation is not required. The equity accounting is applicable. For the you want to be careful. It's a 1 month period, 2 months period because the ගත්තේ කවද්ද 20 ජනවාරි පෙබරවාරි එක අපි ඉවර වෙනවා කවද්ද 31 මාර්තු 20. එතකොට මාස දෙකයි, right? 75 million. The investment in subsidiary, associate, 75 million. Initially, we recognize at cost plus stated capital return earnings is not relevant. Isunang තමයි අපි ඒක බලන්නේ. Post acquisition profit is 23 million evenly accrued throughout the කියන්නේ අවුරුද්ද පුරා ඒකාකාරීව පැවතුණා කියන එක. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි 23000 බෙදීම 12 වැඩි කිරීම 2 ගන්නවා. plus ඒ කියන්නේ plus අපේ initial cost එක 75000යි. අපි එතකොට 78833ක් තමයි investment in associate කියලා අපි recognize කරන්නේ. Right? Investment in associate මං කිව්වේ 75000යි. මේකෙන් පොඩ්ඩක් ඉන්න. investment in associate මූලික cost එකට අපි recognize කරා 75000යි cost එක. අපිට මිලියන මේ දෙක වැදක් නැහැ. අපි මාස දෙකයි අපි acquire කරේ. මිලියන 23ක් ලබලා profit. මිලියන 23යි. මිලියන 23යි 23 මේ තියෙන්නේ මෙතන මේ 23 බෙදීම 12. එතකොට මාසෙක කොට එනවා. මාස දෙකයි. ඒකෙනුත් අපිට අයිති 125යි අපි invest කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒතර අපි 125ක profit එක විතරයි recognize කරගන්නේ 958යි. මේක as a line item we representing 75958යි. working number 4. Investment in associate initially at cost and plus the post acquisition profit, it ended up with the 75,958, right? It's easy, right? In March 2020, MPL made a sales. MPL is the associate to the TPL is who අපේ TPL කවුද? subsidiary නේ. TPL කියන්නේ අපේ subsidiary කෙනෙක්. අපි RPL හැමතිස්සෙම අපි parent කියලා හිතන්න ඕනේ, right? Right. 45යි cost plus markup all stocks of the RPL. Sorry, TPL subsidiary විකුණලා මේ කවුද associate එක. එතකොට අපිට unrealized profit එකක් එනවා 45 million කියන්නේ 4500ක් කියන්නේ 120ක වටිනාකමක් into 20%, right? ඒ කියන්නේ 4500ක ඒවා විකුණලා තියෙනවා 120කට. ඒ කියන්නේ 20ක් unrealized profit. but මේකුත් subsidiary නේ sorry associate එක නේ විකුණලා තියෙන්නේ. මේකුත් 125ක් ගන්න ඕනේ 188යි unrealized profit. ඇයි? මොකද මේක විකුණලා තියෙන ළමයි අපේ කවුද? associate එක විකුණලා අපිට associate එක අයිති 125යි. ඒක අපිට අයිති 125යි. අපි unrealized profit එකත් recognize කරගන්න ඕනේ 125ක්. එක fullම අපි bear කරගන්නේ නැහැ ළමයි. එතකොට 125යි නම් 188යි මේ 4500ක් කියන්නේ 4500ක් කියන්නේ 120ක්. ඒකෙන් 20ක් තමයි unrealized profit එක. ඒකත් අපිට 125යි. මොකද අප subsidiary නෙමෙයිනේ විකුණලා තියෙන්නේ. කවුද විකුණලා තියෙන්නේ? subsidiary නම් 175ක් අපි bear කරගන්න වෙනවා. කවුද මෙතන විකුණලා තියෙන්නේ? associate එක විකුණලා තියෙන්නේ අපිට. This is a downstream transaction. 188යි, right? Unrealized profit. How to recognize? Working number 5. Go to the working number 5. Working number 5. 188යි. Inventory should be credited. Who is recognizing the unrealized profit? The retained earnings should be creditor. Sorry, debitor. 188යි. මොකද parent අදාළ කොටස මේක. parent මේ sorry subsidiary profit එකකින් අඩු වෙන්න ඕනේ. මොකද subsidiary නේ නෑ. දැන් මේකේ අපිට දැන් විකුණලා තියෙන්නේ කවුද? MPL made sales amounting. MPL කියන්නේ අපේ subsidiary මේ associate. to TPL. ඒ කියන්නේ TPL කියන අපේ subsidiary. ඒතර inventory තියෙන්නේ TPL ගාව. right? ඒතර TPL ගේ කියන්නේ group එකේ inventory credit වෙන්න ඕනේ. අඩු වෙන්න ඕනේ. සහ මේ unrealized profit එක අපේ group එකනේ අපි TPL ගේ අපි එකතු කරානේ ළමයි. මෙතන මේ අපි line එකක් add කරානේ අපේ investment in associate එක. ඇත්තටම මෙච්චරක් දැන් අපිට වටින්නේ නැහැ. මේ මෙච්චරක් වටින්නේ 958ක් වුණාට මේක පුම්බල අපි තියෙන්නේ. මොකද අපි unrealized profit එකක් තියෙනවා. මේකෙන් අඩු කරන්න ඕනේ. ඇත්තටම මේක ඇතුලේ තර unrealized profit එක තියෙනවා. MPL ගේ අපේ share එක 125 ගත්තානේ. එතකොට right මෙතන 188ට අඩු කරන්න ඕනේ return earnings වලින්. මොකද අපේ return earnings වලින් මේක අඩු වෙන්න ඕනේ. right? අපි බෝරුවක් වෙන්නලා තියෙන හින්දා. right? දැන් adjustments ටික ඉවරයි. those is hindi. easy right? පොඩ්ඩක් පැටලෙනවා මටත් නැත්තේ නේ. මේක අපි ගත්තා finance cost එක deferred consideration දැන් line by line addition කරගෙන යන්න තියෙන්නේ. Pros acquisition profit එක අපිට තියෙනවා 49,1000. ඒක කොහොමද ගත්තේ? දැන් මෙතන තියෙනවා මේ return earnings 1,81,000යි. acquisition date එකේ profit එක කීයද? 1,32,000. 1,81,000 1,32,000 ගියොත් pros acquisition profit එක එනවා 49,000. මේ 49,000 NCIට 125ක් බෙදන්න ඕනේ. ඉතුරු ගානේ parent යනවා. 49,000න් 125ක් කියන්නේ 12,250. ඉතුරු ගානේ මේ parent යනවා. එතකොට අපි working number 6 එකට ගියොත් W6 මේ NCIට යනවා 12,250. right? NCIට 12,250ක් යනවා. ඉතුරු ගානේ යනවා කාටද? Retained earnings වලට යනවා. Consolidated retained earnings වලට යනවා. post acquisition profit එක. මේ දෙකොල්ල මේක එකතු කරලා ආරම්භය ආරන් තියෙන්නේ. හරි. මෙතන කරලා තියෙන ළමයි මෙහෙමයි. return earnings මුළු ගානම එකතු කරලා දැන් මෙතන තියෙනවානේ මෙච්චර මේ return earnings කියලා තියෙනවානේ 7,60,700ක් 7,60,700යි 1,81,000යි මේ 1,81,000න් ආයෙ අපි අඩු කරලා තියෙනවා කීයද 12,250යි මොකද ඒක අපිට ආයි තියෙන NCIට ආයි ඒකයි කරලා තියෙන්නේ එහෙමත් පුළුවන් multiple method සහ දෙයක් ඔයාලට preferred method එක use කරන්න ඒ ටික තමයි තියෙන්නේ ඊට පස්සේ මේක balance වෙනවා 6 ලක්ෂ sorry 2,06,93ට 2,106,093 done 20 marks is given in CA but in our examination 40 marks is given in this not complex like this right thank you